Thank you very much, Carrie. And we're going to continue talking about the budget, budget talks right here and now. And we are going to be chatting with Darrion Narine. He's the Vice Chairman of Inclusion and Engagement of the Commonwealth Youth Council. Good morning, Darrion.
Hi, good morning, Rokas. What's up, man? I hope everything popping.
You all right?
Yeah, good for the while, man.
So today is budget day. We're talking budget. Is there anything in particular you're looking forward to in the budget or hoping for in the budget?
You know, I think a lot of people actually covered what we want to be looking for in this budget coming up, and that's of course a major focus on education. Over the last couple of years, one of the things that we've seen is, of course, the national security budget being at top of mind in terms of the amount of allocation that they're getting. But one of the things I oftentimes see and that I oftentimes share with people is that if you focus on the education sector, that ultimately impacts the amount of issues that we have around security in Trinidad and Tobago, because they're tied, right? They're not mutually exclusive, but rather they're interrelated and intertwined. So you want to start target when we look at issues around crime and criminality within Trinidad and Tobago, we realize that as young populations who are normally under the most impact or who are normally most affected. Very often it's 14, 15-year-olds who are recruited into these gangs, etc. So what I'm looking at and what I'm hoping for is that we see a major focus or major shift into education as well, as we talk that whole talk about looking at other ways and creative ways to deal with this. Because if you start educating children from very young about peace and the importance of peace and the importance of understanding their own issues at home, their social issues, and being able to navigate that, if we focus more funds towards counseling and stuff as well within the education sector, I think that we could have a big impact in all the other areas, even health, right? We're going to be looking at an increasing the amount of allocation towards health this time around, but that's also because of the irresponsibility of a lot of people in terms of just pure ignorance sometimes. They engage in irresponsible behaviors, but if you have some form of education campaigns, you develop that level of thought and that level of thinking, critical thinking at a very young age. It becomes easier to reduce all the other areas as well. So I'm a big fan of education and putting more resources into diversifying the education budget itself.
It's very interesting because do you think that at this time we still the government will still put so much focus or so much investment into the national security budget, or do you think a lot of it will probably transfer across the health based on the pandemic and the deficit and all that stuff?
Yeah, so COVID-19 is happening. It's very much still alive and still all over the country. So I think that we're going to see a transfer because we've seen a drop in, obviously, in the statistics around crime in Trinidad and Tobago. So you're going to see that shift happening away from the national security budget over into health. But again, for me, a lot of this comes down to reduce all these overheads on a whole. Sometimes comes down to just basic education as well. But I'm hoping to see that shift across there. We need to strengthen the health sector as well. So much you have so much people and individuals who are working there who are under so much strain. Yeah. Because of the amount of requirements now and the amount of hours that they're required to work, but also sometimes we just don't have the technology within the health sector as well. So even amping up things inside there, research is one of the big areas that a lot of people tend to forget about within health. We need to have a lot more people doing a lot more research as well to see how we could curb the effects of this pandemic, but also how we can improve the health and well-being of our citizens on a whole.
How do you suggest that we, a big part of the budget has been, we talk about cutbacks and we talk about shifting things around, but how do we increase income? How do we get more money generated in the economy?
So, Rokas, every single time we end this talk about diversification, everybody wants to diversify everything. But I think one of the most important things is the systems that we already have in place to improve those. Right, and improving efficiency. So I'm big on efficiency. When you look at the tenets of governance, efficiency is one where that tops there, because once you improve efficiency, you improve overall governance, you improve overall working structure, and then you improve overall income as a whole. So one of the things that I tend to look at is, of course, this whole idea of digitization that has been touted around from the last general elections. It's been touted around a lot. And I'm hoping that we could actually have the movement now to see it actually becoming more active within the wider population, within the wider society. So even in areas that people have been talking about that we need to put more cash or more resources behind. For example, the creative industries. The digitization of the creative industries is one way in which we can see the movement forward in such a big way, in such a great way. And that could then bring in an income for us. One of the things that I oftentimes note and that I have been taking notes of, we know that Gael dominated the news quite recently for reasons that you know should not have been. But imagine the archives that Gael has, Rockus. Imagine that. Imagine digitizing that and then being able to monetize that as well and send that out to the wider not only the wider population but the wider world.
How do we monetize that, Darrion?
Sorry?
How are we monetizing that? Because we've seen that Gael has been running the footage, they've been running all their archival footage, and they still ended up in the financial situation that they did. How do we monetize our history? How do we monetize that information, that content?
Right. So, of course, the most important thing is to look at some of the global powerhouses in terms of how they monetize their content and stuff. There's a huge support from the government that comes as well. So you see, you have a huge role from them. And they have to play a huge role in that, in terms of the dissemination of that, because this comes, of course, with your negotiations with other countries across the globe to say, all right, well, this is a product that we also have here that we could offer into these different areas, into these different spaces. When you look at like BBC and these places, they are excellent at not only monetizing what they have, but monetizing what other people have in their archives as well, taking those things and pushing it out. So we need to look at and see how we could do something similar as well with our local content, and make it palatable as well to global audiences. So I think that it is quite possible. Yeah. I just think that we just need some more assistance and some more help in those areas. But as well, Ruckus, and I sure you know this, there are many performers and singers out there who have not been able to copyright their music.
They don't own their masters,
yeah, their masters and everything, and send it out to the wider population. Why don't we have all our local music on Instagram Music, you know?
Right.
Or why don't we have all our local music out there and all those other platforms like Spotify, etc. All of these are ways in which people can monetize their talents and their works within the creative industries quite easily.
Well, Darrion, that's the beginning of a very, very deep and very long conversation that we can't have this morning, but we will be having that conversation, I assure you. We're going to get the nation talking about it. I want to thank you very much for joining me this morning, Darrion. And, you know, we look forward to the budget today and see what happens as we go forward. And we'll be checking in with you again, I'm sure. So thank you very much, Darrion Narine, Vice Chairman of Inclusion and Engagement at the Commonwealth Youth Council. This has been Budget Talks on Now.